Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Hello, everybody. This is Ken Hoffman, the host of Ag Matters. I'm a farmer out here in Palmer, owner of Matsu Microgreens, and I'm also one of the directors at Matsu Farm Bureau. If anyone out there wants to join the agriculture community, learn more about farming, then please email me at matsufarmbureau@gmail.com, and I can get you connected with the community, or you can join our organization by going to alaskafb.org. So today is a special day because we have people in the studio here with me. I'm not just talking to the air. We have Alaska Farmland Trust, Abby and Margaret, and so they're going to talk to us about the trust and what the trust has been doing this summer. So tell us, what do you guys have to share?
Well, as of yesterday, which is, I guess we shouldn't time date that, but we closed on the Grover easement, which is 115.1 acres of land permanently protected. That's on the Springer system, on the inner Springer system. So if you've taken a photo of an iconic barn on the Springer system, it's probably the Grover farm. And so from now into perpetuity, that will stay as farmland in our community. So that's our big win for the past week. Prior to that, we are so thankful for Wes and Bonnie Grover for making that commitment to the community, as well as sort of leaving that family legacy for their kids and grandkids. And you'll see a sign going up later on this summer that will say Farmland Forever. And we're very excited to sort of have that, give that gift to the community.
Totally. So the 115 acres, is it that big hayfield that everybody sees, or is it multiple parts of their estate?
So it's that field, and then it's the one that's across the street from that.
Okay.
And then so the barn or the house is kind of the limit, and then you hit the river. Mm-hmm. And so it's that acreage a little bit to the east of there, and then a little bit to the north as well. So it's four separate parcels, and we just made it one contiguous easement. It doesn't mean that each of the parcels could get sold off in the future, but it's very limited for what development is allowed on that moving into the future. So as you see it, that's going to be the primary amount of land that stays intact.
That's awesome. I'm sure Wes was very excited. He's been talking about this for a couple of years now.
He was, yeah. His daughter wrote me yesterday saying that he ate 4 ice cream bars, which I think is a big deal for him. So, yeah, I think that they are just over the moon and super excited that that's a legacy. And, as we are working with so many aging landowners, we have these conversations of how they want to see what they've taken care of so long move into the future. And that's kind of the biggest story that we meet up with these landowners, or sort of say, I've loved this place and I want other people to love this place going into the future and see it how I saw it. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of it's so much more important to sort of preserve that story and the legacy of the family as it is the land, because it's at the heart of the work that we do.
That's amazing. He's a strict business owner. Mm-hmm. He is a smart guy, but it's really cool to see him donate such a huge piece of land. And I know a couple of years ago, I bought my first acre of land from the Grovers, and he didn't have to do that. He could have sold it for a lot more and attached it to his commercial piece of property, but he knew that I wanted a farm, and so he sold it to me at a pretty good price. So I like the Grovers.
Yeah, so when you're looking at land stewardship and that conversational point, I think you think of land. We can think of land either as an investment, or we can think of land as something that can produce for us. And you can either be a steward of that land, meaning you only get this lifetime to interact with that parcel, and then after that, it goes on to somebody else. My mom always says, yeah, we've just held ground that we've just had to pay taxes on. It's not really ours. We can't take it with us. Dirt doesn't go with you when you die. Mm-hmm. Soil doesn't go with you when you die, she would say. And so I think if you think of it as something that a resource we can move forward in the future rather than just an investment property, it really changes how we look at the land that we have and the land that we use. That we're not just takers, but that we are caregivers of the land. And that's hopefully something that we can encourage the story for and encourage all of our landowners to look at the highest and best use of the properties they have. And maybe highest, best use of your property is as homes for people into the future, and that's great. But maybe if you've got really good agricultural soils on your property, we think of that highest and best use for that as providing food for our community moving forward into the future. And we really want to emphasize that. We're not anti-development at the Farmland Trust. It's been levied at us. That's not the case. It's just in Alaska, there's so few acreage that is prime agricultural soils. And so we work really hard to make sure that those are the soils that we are protecting and that we are encouraging all of our communities across the state to look at those lower quality grounds, because as we know, there's so much gravel ground in this state, and there's so much kind of maybe not even wetlands, marshy ground, like high forested, really hilly topography, not good for farming. Large, flat swaths of lands, valley lands, we should really be thinking community-wide that those are where we're going to grow our food from for a sustainable future.
Yeah, for sure. They're not making any more land, so we got to save what we have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard. It takes thousands and thousands of years, and let's not go down that route. But that's the Grover stuff, but Abby's got some very fun things. What?
Well, while we're talking about Grover, though, I did have a thought that I wanted to add, because I came to the trust as a layman. I don't have an agricultural background, and I didn't know what an agricultural easement was. And so I've learned a lot about it, and I want to make sure that the listeners, they're probably like me and don't know what it is. And I want to make sure that they understand, because we use words like gift and donate, which it definitely is a gift when a landowner decides to put their land in easement. But I want to be clear that they're donating the development rights, that they're not donating any actual land.
Yeah, even my mother-in-law was like, oh, so you own the Grover property? I was like, no, I've worked at this stuff for a long time. I can't believe I haven't explained it to you. So I am really bad at that. So we don't take title to the property. What we do is just like you have a utility easement maybe on the boundary of your property. We are the same thing, except it goes on the surface rights of your property. So we just hold an easement on that surface right, just like the utility has a strip in order for them to put their, whatever their utility is, fiber optics, etc. So what we're saying is that we own the development rights of that property, so that into the future, it won't be able to be subdivided and developed for housing or any other commercial use besides agricultural development. What we mean by that is when we develop these conservation easements with the landowner will say, no, let's use a building envelope here to make sure we can have barns or greenhouses, etc., for the future use of a farm. So we're not limiting by that the business production of a farm moving forward. So maybe 100 years from now, that's going to turn into a cattle ranch, or maybe it'll be a vegetable farm. We don't know what the future looks like on each of our parcels, but we can say is that we've allowed there to be enough flexibility when we write those easements so that people can be successful in business. Because at the end of the day, we want to keep farmers farming, and that the other core part of our mission, yes, it's about farmland conservation, but the second part of that is to keep farmers farming and keep that land into production.
Yeah, and then the property can be sold 100 times. It appreciates. They can sell it for profit. They can leave it to their family. A great example is Mountain Field Farm.
Yeah.
That's one of our protected properties, and the owner sold it to another family who is investing in the business there and going to grow it as a farming business, but she was able to sell it and make a profit off of it, and it's a really sophisticated tool that ideally works for everybody.
Okay. I know the Mountain Field Farm is 20 acres, and so how I understand those, the Farmland Trust only deals in parcels that are 40 acres. Is that true?
Incorrect.
Okay.
Incorrect.
Good.
We're educating the public today.
Yes. Why that myth exists. So back in the day, there was another federal program called FRPP. Oh no, what's the acronym? Anyways, that program, that the NRCS, the federal program, did have kind of an acreage requirement. The Farmland Trust itself has no limit, so no minimum, no maximum in terms of acreage. What we care about is the quality of those soils in production. So if you have 5-10 acres that's been in really good production, and we have a history, and we can do the soil test and sort of show that as an active farm, come talk to us. It may not then be competitive necessarily for the ASEP ALE, which is another terrible acronym for the new program that the NRCS runs that helps us fund putting these conservation easements in place. But there are other programs and ways we can help protect your ground. So don't think, oh, I only have so many acres, I wouldn't qualify. Not true. So just come talk to us.
I didn't know that. So somebody could even donate 1 acre if it's in a farm production?
Yep.
And as someone who knows nothing, I want to interject there again too, because I learned about this, that there are two types of easements that we work with, and it's an important distinction. There's one where we help the landowner apply for federal funds. So there's a federal program that will compensate a landowner when they donate their development rights. And that's all these fancy acronyms we're talking about.
Yes.
And they have restrictions, of course, on what types of land, how many trees, that sort of thing. And there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But Mountain Field Farm, for example, that was just the owner privately donated the development rights and didn't apply for any federal funding.
Got it.
So they were able to sort of write the language as they chose, and there was no restrictions on how many trees or the size or anything like that. And they still get a big fat tax write-off. So there's still a benefit to the landowner
so that's over
to do
15 years. How it works right now with the IRS tax code is over a 15-year period, you can take up to a 50% deduction of your income over time. So that you write that off over time over a 15-year period to the value of that conservation easement. Okay. So if your easement is valued at $100,000 that you're donating, right, you can take that donation all in 1 year, or you can save it until a year you know you're going to get a lot of income in. So it helps you sort of have a little bit of an income tax deferment moving over a 15-year period. So it can be of a huge benefit to folks to help with income taxes. So there is that incentive as well.
So it's like a depreciation deduction?
No, it's just sort of say, okay, you donated the value of your conservation easement at $100,000. You can in the first year just take that as a deduction, or you can spread it out over 15 years.
Okay. It's sort of a cousin to a charitable donation.
Yes. Yeah. So you would report it in a similar fashion. It's a different form, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there is a tax advantage for doing that as well. And that specifically for those smaller acreage, we can turn those around in like a year or 2 years based on the complexity of your property if you were going to donate the full value of your conservation easement. So that's something that we can actually operate quick. When we're looking at the ASAP ALE program, typically those take 2 to 3 years. The Grovers took 5 for a myriad of reasons, but
to jump through all the federal hoops to get that funding from the government.
Yeah, because we have a third party, the NRCS, who's making sure that these are high value and everything is in perfect order to their specifications. And so donating the conservation easement with a flower farm, that took a lot less time at Mountain Field Flower Farm.
How do you determine development rights value?
So we don't determine that. After we have a survey, typically how the process works, you apply, we see if it's a high quality parcel that meets our criteria internally within the trust organization. And then after that, we get a survey.
Which is mostly based on soil quality, is that right?
Soil quality, a history of production. We look at soils map from around the state. And so if it qualifies there, then we get a survey done. And then from the survey, we have an appraisal done. And so each of those steps, and once that appraisal comes back, then we know the value of that. We don't determine that as a trust. We are not qualified. No. As well as that we would have, what is that called? We have a vested interest to have it be lower, right?
Yeah. Conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest. We need that third party. Just like if you were to sell a house and you need an appraisal on a house, right? Like you need that third party person looking at that. So after that appraisal comes back, and that's what the value of that is, what is then submitted to either the IRS or through the NRCS program. So we know that valuation from there.
Okay, very good. So what constitute as production? So of course there's hay, there's vegetables. What about if you had 40 acres and you had like 20 beehives in the middle of the 40 acres? Or if you're doing sod farming or things like that?
You said the 3-letter word.
Yeah, sod.
So in terms of active agriculture production, sod farming doesn't qualify, and it doesn't qualify for this reason, which is that when you are harvesting sod, you're pulling up soil. The NRCS, which was formed after the Dust Bowl, and their main focus of all of their programs is actually talking about land conservation or soil conservation because of what happened from the Dust Bowl. And so all of their programs are going to be having that conversation of how soil, like looking at soil health. And so sod farming, you do remove a little bit of soil off the top. Well, it doesn't qualify under their programs. Okay. And that doesn't necessarily mean that person couldn't qualify for putting a conservation easement on the property as a donated. It just is the federal program.
Got it.
So let's say you do have a 10, 20 acre sod farm. You can still go and put a conservation easement on it, but you're just going to donate 100% of the value rather than just 50% of the value.
Okay.
Because within the NRCS programs, they're paying 50% of the value of your development rights. That's what I'm going to say. There's a lot of misconceptions about that. It doesn't mean the Farmland Trust wouldn't look at your property property, it means that it couldn't apply for the federal programs. And then as far as like apiculture goes or the like, I mean, are those beehives sitting on high quality soil? And that's what we would look at, because 10 years from now, if you don't have the beehives anymore, we want to know that ground underneath could do something else. Beehives aren't considered surfacing as long as you don't put cement pads down, right? If they're in a field, well, that's a low impact type of agricultural. It'd be like having sheep out on a field.
Yeah.
There you are herding your bees.
Okay, I got it. So it has to do with soil.
It has to do with soil. And in terms of if there's questions about quality of soil, then we would also look at production history. So let's say your farm wasn't necessarily on the maps, but you've been producing or building that soil up over a 20, 30-year period, that would also qualify. We don't just sort of take soil maps alone. We look at also production history on the property as well. And so if you've had it in production for 30 years, that means you've put 30 years of developing your soils over time.
Got it.
So let that be known as well.
Okay, what if a piece of property isn't in production anymore? If the farmer decides to stop producing.
So if that ground's fallow and they've kept it clear, right, but we also still have good soils on it, and there was a historical record for there at some point in time having been in hay production or the like, it would still qualify with the Farmland Trust.
Okay. What about a current Farmland Trust parcel?
If it then goes fallow, our hope is we're still protecting the conservation easement. We monitor the properties every single year. So if I see on a property that we've got invasives coming in, or if we've got the forest is taking back its own kind of thing, if I've got young saplings, then what we work with that landowner to actually make sure that it doesn't get reclaimed by essentially, willow, and then we go into some cottonwoods, that type of thing. So we will work with the landowner to make sure that it stays cleared. And then our hope is then they would enroll that property into our Alaska Farmlink program, which the Farmlink program was started in 2016 or 2017, where we help link farmland owners with farmland seekers. One of the biggest issues in farming community in Alaska and nationwide right now is farm access for beginning farmers. And so we want to look at innovative models for how we can get these beginning farmers onto land. And it's been a little bit in stasis for the past couple of years, but in the next year, we're going to revamp that program and make more connections happen.
Totally. That's super exciting stuff, especially the Farmlink. When I started my farm, I started in my parents' front lawn in their subdivision. And so 1/20th of an acre, I started my business on that on the side, and we made 20 grand off 1/20th of an acre. So these lawns, they're good farmland. It's not acres and acres. You could make a living on a quarter acre. So that's really cool. Hope to get lots of landowners, even if they have a half acre, they're living in a subdivision, hope to get them all on there.
Yeah, if our Farmlink, and then we're at the top of the time, but what I will say for those landowners is just let us know. I have people who are looking anywhere from 2 acres to 30 acres. It's like a really big swing of how much acreage they want. But there are so many people out there who are like you with big dreams and big hopes and what they want to see happen. And that sort of next push is us building that next generation of farm owners in our state. And we can all work together, and that's landowners and sort of organizations like the Farm Bureau to make sure we're cultivating the next generation of farmers.
Yeah, for sure.
But before that, we want to talk about what else is happening at the Farmland Trust. What's the exciting news, Abby?
Well, I want to tell people how they can support the Farmland Trust.
Good.
Because it's my job to think about money.
Yeah. She does the hard work, actually.
Yeah. And all of these things that Margaret just described, stewardship, surveys, appraisals, all of it costs a lot of money. The average easement takes, $30,000 to $60,000 between start to finish. There's legal fees, that sort of thing. And we're one of the only trusts in the nation that won't turn landowners away if they can't write a check for that, which is really amazing, but that means we have a lot of money we have to fundraise for. So I wanted to remind everybody that this is our 20th anniversary. The trust was started in 2005, and over those 20 years, we've built a ton of momentum. In the first 10 years of the trust, we closed on 3 easements. In the second 10 years, we closed on 6 more, and we currently have 5 active applications and another 5 we're expecting to come in, so that would be another 10 in the next 3 to 5 years. So the momentum is building. Now is a great time for people to jump in and support the trust. So how can you do that? How can you support the trust? So because it's our 20th anniversary, we want to do something really exciting. Craig Taylor Equipment has sponsored a John Deere tractor for us that we're raffling off all summer long. We're going to give it away at the State Fair. We're super excited. You may have seen us. We've been in every parade and farmers market that we can make it to, showing off this tractor. You can buy tickets on our website, akfarmland.com. It's $30 a ticket, 4 for $100. We have other amazing prizes. Alaska Airlines donated 2 round-trip tickets to anywhere they fly. Second prize. Bush's Bunches, people are the most excited about this prize, I think, donated 1 year supply of farm fresh eggs.
Wow.
So people are pumped about that prize. So, and all of that, anytime you buy a ticket, think of it as a charitable donation. You're supporting the trust. You can also support us by becoming a member on our website. You can be a sustaining member. You can do $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever, or you can make a one-time donation. And all of that is on akfarmland.com. So you can help us protect more property.
Are there any perks to becoming a member?
I mean, your heart grows 3 times every month when your card gets swiped for that $5. We have talked about that we should come up with some, like you get a tote bag, some of those great member benefits. But at the moment, it's just that great feeling you get for helping us create Farmland forever.
And if you want to feel good about your donation, we're like the most ragtag team. Meaning it's just the 2 of us, right?
And we're part-time because that's all we can afford to pay for.
Well, and time. But yes, when people look at an organization in terms of like organizational health, we're
so lean.
So lean.
There's no overhead.
Yeah, there's no fat on that pig.
Yeah. So every dollar really does go to the cause, which is pretty cool.
So cool. Any events? I know you guys just had an event. Tell me about the event.
Yeah, we just had our Farmland Forever Fest, formerly known as Drink Beer, Save Farms, which we did both of those things at that party. That was great. Hamilton Farms hosts us every year. It was an awesome event. We raised over $20,000 and sold over 100 raffle tickets. So it was a really fun event. Thank you to Bleeding Heart Brewery. They made us I don't know if anybody sampled that delicious drink local, grow localer brew that they made for us.
It was a really good summer drink,
It was delicious. And they are selling it at the brewery still. So we didn't manage to drink it all. So you can go over to the Bleeding Heart Brewery and buy yourself a glass of that. That was a great support to the cause. And we had a great time. We do that every year. And then throughout the summer, like I said, you'll see us at all the farmers markets, that sort of thing. We regularly have mixers and educational events that you can see us at to learn about land transfer, to learn about Farmlink. You can find out about those on our social media, Facebook and Instagram. And you can also sign up for our newsletter at akfarmland.com.
Super exciting. Well, thank you so much for coming in the studio. I like having people here. So lots of
thanks
fun.
for having us.
Great opportunity.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All righty. Very exciting. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.